and one of the all-time greats, the GOAT. It is Charles Woodson on Wilde and Tausch. Charles, good morning. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
Are you mad at me yet, or are you going to be mad at me soon?
No, man. Hey, you know what, Wilde? I'm living a good life, man. There's no reason to be mad.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. So let me present to you my argument. Right. And then you can tell me that I'm an idiot, or you can say, hey, I kind of see where you're going here, okay? So right. I know your first year in Green Bay was not great. We've talked about that many times. And then you came around, and the Green Bay Packers organization came around because you did and won a Super Bowl. But for me, obviously, we all know what a great player you are. That's why you're in Canton. But among the things that was so great about you was the impact you had on all the other guys. And they all, you had a gravitational pull to your teammates. Al, who dressed like a slob before you came along, changed his.
What did Al do? What did Al do to you? Jeez.
That might have been a little harsh.
Oh, snap.
Okay.
Hey, I'm texting Al right now. He's coming on after Charles.
I'm ruining all friendships in one day.
So I'll let Al defend himself on that one.
Okay. Did not dress to the nines like you did. So you get here, you set that standard, and Nick and Tremont Williams and Al, everyone elevates their fashion game. Tremont Williams has talked many times about not really knowing how to watch film until you came along and you taught him that. And then he became so much better at recognizing things. And by that Super Bowl year, he was seeing things, and that's why he was making some of the plays that he did. And when I look at Xavier McKinney, who has done a Charles Woodson-esque thing by having interceptions in the first 3 games, I am seeing him have that same impact on a bunch of young guys in his room. They are gravitating to him. You're talking about a 2-time All-Pro in Jair Alexander, who's not only happy about the new scheme, but also has really been influenced by Xavier McKinney's presence, and it's changed his attitude and his outlook. So, in that narrow definition, am I wrong to say that about Xavier McKinney? And more importantly, how important do you think it was for your teams for you to be that way and be that type of leader that guys were drawn to?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're off at all. And I see, the same thing. And so I've been, watching Xavier McKinney, for a couple of years, even when he was with the Giants. I did this, kind of like this little contest a couple of years ago. It was called the Intercept Wines, Player of the Month. And so whatever player would get the most interceptions, I would send them a Intercept Wines gift card for the month. And Xavier was one of the guys who got that for having the most interceptions in that particular month. And the thing about Xavier McKinney that I like is that when you watch him play, you can understand that he understands what the offense is trying to do to him. Like, there's certain plays that players make where, they've studied the film and they were anticipating something happening because of how the formation was set up or where a certain person was aligned. If a particular receiver was out of a position that he normally doesn't play, and they notice those things and they make plays based off of that. And so McKinney makes those kind of plays. And so it's one thing for a player to, the quarterback scrambling around and he throws it up and you make a pick. And it's another thing when you are attacking the football because you know what's about to happen. And I think he's that type of player. I think that the reason why, those guys gravitate towards him is for that particular reason, is that they're able to, kind of pick his brain as he's looking at film and saying, hey, well, why did you do that? Or what did you see on this particular play? And then he's able to break that down for him. And then, for some guys, it just really takes that for them to say, oh, wow, I get that, And so I think when you look at his game last week in the play that Jair made, I'm not saying this is because of Xavier McKinney or what it is, but Jair knew that play was coming. He saw something in the formation. I always tell, I'm coaching my son's high school team now, and I always tell them to scan the whole formation. Don't just look at the guy you're lining over. Scan the whole formation and let it talk to you. And I'm sure Jair did that same thing. And so maybe that was a part of influence of Xavier McKinney and something that he got from film, that he jumped that route without any hesitation. And I feel like to answer the second part of the question with myself, we used to have, when we would have film study before practice, you always went over, the routes that you were going to see in practice. And so when we went out to practice, what I would do is, whenever, our offense lined up, scout team or whatever, I would step in front of passes, or I would pick certain passes off, and everybody would be like, hey, man, what did you see right there? I'm like, man, I just watched it in film. You know what I'm saying? It's like, why would I come out here and allow a catch to be made on a play that I just saw in film? And so those things, helped me when I went on the field to recognize things and to react to them. And so on Sundays, there's no hesitation, because I've already seen it and I've already reacted, to it. And of course, sometimes the teams can do different things, but you just have to be a football player after that. And so I feel like the players, they saw that and they begin to understand, what we see in the film room, the things that we're going over, it's just a correlation. Yeah, the teams are going to do that. They may get to it a different way. Sometimes they'll line up in it, or sometimes they'll motion to it. But you just have to get your eyes trained to see it. And so I think that, that was probably the biggest impact that I had on the guys that I was around is, hey, when you see it, don't hesitate and just understand that the things that we are going over every single day are the things you're going to see on Sunday. So don't act surprised when it happens.
Charles, who taught you how to watch film? Because you did. There is no doubt you made that impact that Jason is talking about. How did you learn how to effectively start doing that?
I think you kind of piece it all together. I think a lot of it is, just experience, of course, playing a lot of football. But I remember, first getting a taste of it when Vance Bedford was my defensive backs coach at the University of Michigan. He used to kind of do the same thing. He would just tell me, hey, man, these things that we're going over in practice, or on film, that's what you're going to see in the games. And so I made plays based off of that. I remember working with Coach Chuck Pagano for a year or two in Oakland, and he was, man, probably the best at breaking down third down. And so, a piece of that, would come from him. Joe Witt, Marcus Robertson, who I worked when I was mainly a safety in Oakland my last couple of years. He helped me even in that stage of my career. So there's just, over time, you pick up different ways to watch it until you you formulate your own way of watching the film. And so, my way of watching the film is I like to watch film based on a formation, and I like to see it, the entire way down the field. So if a team was in a 3-by-1 set, I want to see 3-by-1 from, the 0 to the 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, coming out all the way to our own 5, and I'd watch 3-by-1 that whole way. Then I'd go to the next formation, and I always based off what a team ran the most out of. So if it was 11 personnel that a team used mostly, then that's what I would watch most of the time. If it was 12 personnel, it would be 12. And then I'd get to the other formations, as they came. But I would spend most of the time on what a team normally does. And so over time, you just develop your way of watching it. I showed those guys, how I watched it. And some of them probably did it that way for a while. And then maybe, they found, in that another way to watch it that was easier and better for them. And so that's just kind of the way it goes.
Charles, do you have one moment that you can recall that you watched all that film, you saw it, your eyes lit up, and it played out exactly the way you did? You had a bunch of pick sixes, so I'm assuming, is there one time that you're like, man, that preparation really led me to that you can recall?
Yeah, there's one that I love because I was Tausch knows that a lot of times I didn't practice, so I would go down for warm up, and and then Coach Mike would he would dismiss me and allow me to go back up to the training room, and sometimes I would go into the gym workout, and then after that I would go in the training room, and then I would just get treatment, just trying to get myself ready for the next week. But I would go in there and I would have my laptop and I would watch film as I'm sitting on the training table. And I remember noticing something. We were playing Seattle that week, and I noticed that every time they had this tight end flexed out, they would run this little bench route with them, which is basically like a little 10-yard out. And so I'm watching this film and it just kept showing up. And I remember Joe Witt came into the building. I said, Joe, check this out. And so I showed him the route. I said, if they line up in this, Joe, this Sunday, I promise you, I'm picking it off. And he was like, oh, okay, all right. So that week we go out there and they line up in the formation. And in my mind, I'm just like, oh my God, here it is. And so I lined up in a way to where it made it look like I was in, I lined up press, so it makes it look like I'm in man-to-man. And so, the number one receiver, he takes off, he runs the go because his job is to run off, and then they're going to run the bench route in behind. And so once I took off on the go route by the number one receiver, my eyes immediately get back inside because, it's going to happen, fairly quick. And as soon as I turned around, that quarterback was loading up to throw that bench route, and I just peeled off my guy and picked the ball off. And I was like, it was one of my favorites because I remember telling somebody about it. I told Joe, hey man, I'm picking this off, and it happened. So that's probably one of my favorites.
Talking with Charles Woodson, the Pro Football Hall of Famer and Packers legend. All right, one other thing that I wanted to ask about McKinney as it relates to you. You know this. I was probably annoying because I did it all the time. But almost after every game, win or lose, I was going to you for perspective. What does this mean? What does this mean going forward? And you were so great with us. I am curious, he's really good with us too. But more important than being good with us, it's being good with your teammates. And Jarrett Bush, Sam Shields, Tramon Williams, Nick Collins. Once you became invested in Green Bay, those guys they followed you around. Everything about you, they were cooler because of you. And I am seeing with all these young guys on this roster, right? Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Katan Oladapo. They got a lot of young safeties. I'm seeing the same. What is that like to be that guy? And how seriously did you? Because I know you weren't. Your speeches were great during the Super Bowl run, but you tried to lead by example more than talking. What did it mean to have those guys, and what responsibility did you feel as kind of an older brother to all those guys?
It's interesting because, when I first got in, as you mentioned, it was just, it was a little rocky at first. So, all I wanted to do was come in really and be myself. I didn't really know how things were going to work out in Green Bay. I had no clue. And even with, how things started, I still ended up with 8 interceptions that year. So, guys were still, right. So guys were still able to say, "Oh wow, this guy is disgruntled. He doesn't want to be here." But damn, somehow he still ends up with 8 interceptions. So there must be something.
And he never practices.
And he don't practice. So I think that was important because it was more of a lead by example. Kind of a little bit, to myself, like I said, just because I was trying to figure it out, man, what was going on in my world of, football and how I ended up, there in Green Bay. And so, once things kind of settled down, then it just really, there was an acceptance by myself of where I was at, accepting of my teammates. And so we just all became, over time, just closer as teammates. And then ultimately, you're just great friends. And so we all, ended up spending a lot of time together, and it was great just being able to have conversations with all those guys. When young Sam came in, Tremont came in, of course, Nick, who I talked to last night, by the way, we all became great friends. So to me, it sort of did kind of become like a responsibility, and just trying to, show those guys the right way, trying to show them, how to practice. When I did practice, I know that me and Al used to have, times at practice where we would just take all the reps. And so a part of it was because we were trying to get our looks in, but we were also trying to show guys how to work, and it's different nowadays. Guys don't, you're not allowed to practice, the way we're practicing. They'll make you sit down. But, just trying to show guys, how to work, how to get better, how to be smarter about the game, and understanding that, we're not robots on the field. So don't be a robot. Go out there and play the game you've been playing forever, and have fun doing it. And so I just became, I just started to really enjoy being in that position, being an older player in the league, which is very interesting because McKinney's not very old.
No,
he's still a very young player. So hats off to him for having, those type of leadership qualities early in his career.
All right, speaking of Al, who at least used to be my friend until I said he was a slob with how he dressed, and now that won't be anymore. Which, by the way, me criticizing anyone's fashion is
nice
pretty
sweatshirt.
pathetic.
Yeah, well done.
But I remember, there was nobody better, and maybe nobody better in league history at press man coverage than him, right? But I remember him always talking about how, my interception numbers are never good because that's how you have to play. You don't have vision. So he had 1 year where he was all pro or Pro Bowl, and he had 2 picks that year because that's how good he was at that skill. When you watch the Packers now, we hear Jeff Hafley talk so much about vision and break as their coverage style. I'm curious, because you know the game so well, help me understand why this is working so well. They went from having 7 picks all of last season. They've got 7 picks through 3 games. How does it change when you have vision to the quarterback?
Well, that's where the recognition comes into play. You can have vision on the quarterback and not make any plays. But when you look at the play that Jair made, this is my point. It's like when you line up and that offense breaks the huddle, you're watching for different clues. You're not just out there to have vision on the quarterback. Like it makes it sound, very simplistic, just have vision on the quarterback. But that offensive formation, their splits, it's all talking to you. And so that's where the vision comes into play. It's like, okay, we've been watching film all week. When this team comes out and line up and there's equal spacing between all the receivers, they're going to run all hitches. And so when I watch that film, I see all these hitches. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Jair saw that on film. Mm-hmm. And so there's vision of the entire offense. There's vision on the quarterback. And then at that point, now you gotta have the mindset of, I can't hesitate. Because if he hesitates at all, it's either a pass breakup or the guy catches the ball. And we don't want either of those. We don't like pass breakups. We like interceptions. And so Jair stuck his foot in the ground, and he went and got it based off what he saw. And if you watch, there's no hesitation. And so it's that vision, and also the you got to have the confidence in the vision that you have, that's what they're going to do. And he stuck his foot in the ground. He made the play, and it was beautiful to see.
Charles, you look at the league nationally with your job and what you're doing. Why would the New York Giants not keep Xavier McKinney? He's young. He's a captain. Like, do you just sometimes wonder? It's obviously it's great for us as Packer fans, but what would the Giants be thinking when they don't keep him?
Well, it's the same team that got rid of Saquon Barkley. You tell me. They're not very good at what they do in terms of, keeping the right people around. You know what I'm saying? At least not as of late. It wasn't like that, of course, when we played them, when they were putting together those defensive linemen that were, giving us hell every week or every playoff. But yeah, this group I'm not understanding. You have a young player who you brought into your system as as a young man, a young rookie, and he has performed at a very high level. And for you to look at that and say, you know what, we've seen enough. You know, we'll send him on to the next team. You know, it makes absolutely no sense. You know, he's a guy that you should have tried to do everything in your power to keep him. Now, if Xavier went in there asking for $200 million, then all right, I get that. But you know, I don't know him that well to know what he was looking for at the time. You know, but yeah, I don't understand. You know, how you get rid of a young guy like that who's, you know, just in his mid-20s.
Yeah. Last one for me, Charles. You talked about coaching your kids' team. You're a Hall of Famer. You just went through in great detail how you did this stuff. I've coached my kids. The attention to detail, not there. How's your patience level with this? Because it can't be easy when you have all this knowledge and you're trying to instill it in these young kids. Give me a little vision as far as what Charles Woodson, the coach, looks like.
Yeah, it's hard, Wilde. I always envision, because I never liked any coach that yelled. Like that was the worst thing to me. And I would always, man, I was combative in that setting. You know what I'm saying? If the coach ever raised his voice, it's like, man, come on, man, you can get out of my face with that. And I find myself raising my voice, Wilde, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all, man. So I'm trying. You know, I've had to apologize to the kids, you know, and say, hey, man, I'm sorry, because this is something that I never like to do. But somehow it just happens because, like you said, you know, you see certain things, or you're trying to coach certain things, and you think you're putting it in a way that, you know, is very easy and you know, easy for them to learn, easy for them to retain. And sometimes maybe it doesn't come across like you think it's coming across, and, you know, something's not done the way you want it to be done, and it gets frustrating. But I think in this short time I've gotten a little bit better, you know, and so I'm trying to keep my poise out there, man. But it can be rough at times. But I'm enjoying it. It's been great, you know, working around the kids and you know, just trying to get them to see a little bit of what I see in the game. And like yesterday was very interesting. We were at practice and I'm talking, you know, to one of the linebackers and trying to get his eyes in the right place, you know, on run plays and what they should be looking at. And towards the end of practice, man, he started doing it, started seeing it. And you can see when they start doing something that works, and, you know, there's kind of like the light bulb that goes off, you know, you can see the joy, you know, in their face, and it gives you joy. So I think that's the part about it, man, that really makes it a lot of fun and worthwhile. So I'm enjoying it.
All right, before we let you go then, I have to ask, because this is how Nick Collins started. Nick Collins started, you know, after he retired, he's driving the kids to school, then he's coaching the Pop Warner team, then he's coaching in high school, now he's at his alma mater, Bethune-Cookman. Does this mean 5-6 years from now, when the Badgers are playing Michigan, they'll be coached by head coach Charles Woodson?
Hey, here's what I would say to that. I never in a million years thought that Al Harris would be a coach. that would be your answer, man. I try to never say never to anything. So I don't foresee myself really going beyond what it is right now. So I'll leave it at the fact that Al Harris is a coach right now, and get this, would love to be a head coach.
Yeah.
How about that? How about that? So I mean, that you talk about somebody who's come full circle in terms of a guy who only wanted to be on the line of scrimmage, wanted to play on the right side of the formation, wanted to be man to man, wanted to know who his guy was. That guy is coaching, you know what I'm saying, a defense, like has his hand on everybody. So that's pretty. I always, every time I call him, I talk to him. I'm like, man, I can't believe that you coach it, man. And so it's cool to see. It's cool to see him out there doing his thing.
All right, well, don't call him for a while, because I want you to forget that I said he was a slob before you talk to him again. Charles, we appreciate you so much. Your insights are great, and I feel like I feel like a winner today because Charles Woodson himself didn't say that I was crazy to make the comp between him and what Xavier McKinney is doing for the Packers.
You changed the narrative.
I didn't change it. That's not true. All right, Tausch and I will fight without you. Charles, you're the absolute best. We appreciate you so much. Thanks.
No problem, man. And I hope that all of the Packer fans know that Woodson whiskey is available in your state and Intercept wines as well. So we never can get off the air without interjecting a little business in there with it.
I would say the least we can do is allow you to say that.